come to the thing that involves glue. And because it involves glue, and what we're going to do, a little bit of simplified painting, this is going to be a culmination of everything that you've done so far with that added step of glue. This is the thing that caught your eye as we were going through the Revell catalog. This is the Camaro ZL1. And being a Mustang guy, I can't hold that too hard against you. It's got 580 horsepower, and it's got magnetic shocks. And what that means is, you know, when you're on a rough road, the shocks are soft so that the car rides well, but then when you handle, the shocks immediately stiffen up so that the car doesn't tip too much and turns and handles better. Okay, it kind of gives you the best of both worlds that way, and it's a nice, super fast and super comfortable kind of flagship model, premier model there for the Camaro. There's one that's more expensive still, the Z28, but that's purely a racetrack car, okay? All right. I've had my example of this for months now. I've actually gotten in here and I've riffled around the contents a little bit, but I've put them back together so that we can approximate your opening process as best possible, okay? You'll take your clipper and you'll break the seal there on the side. And what you're going to be greeted with here is an inner sort of partition slash display area that you're going to pull out of the outer sleeve, like so. Okay, so we'll do that. And we'll just have the box sitting back there looking pretty while we work. And you see here that we have the section where the body is on the top, and then underneath, well, that's where all the remaining parts are. Now, you grab a pair of scissors or maybe your clip and free the body. I've already done that. And except for the wheels here, let's pop the little wheel pack out. We'll put that there. I'm going to put the other part of the box off to the side. We have the underneath of the car, the chassis. We'll put that there. And I've already slit the bag. You're going to see here that I have left the parts on the trees, and I've done that very deliberately here. I haven't immediately gone to clipping off all the parts. And that's because I'm going to decide, well, with the obvious exception, you know, of a couple of them. You see, you know, what's missing from this is actually over here. And I had that out just to try it against the chassis a little bit. This actually is going to be the front suspension piece. And we've got the driver's side and passenger side lower control arms there, and this big old splash apron that covers the bottom of the engine. Now that'll sit. We'll set that over here for the time being. We have a baggie with the tires. Pop those over here, and I took the front fascia off of this piece here. Okay, actually it's not the front fascia. This is the grill insert. The part that we see over here in the front bumper, actually, that area is the front fascia, and this grill piece is going to go behind us. We'll see a little bit later on. And in here we have the rear view mirrors, and we have a baggie with the clear headlight parts, and we have a bit more chrome over here. Those have the reflectors for the headlights and such. All right, we've emptied those bags. We're going to get those out of the way. And what I like to do, we're moving up now to about 50 parts, which is probably, you know, between the Aventador and certainly the Mustang. This has got evenly 4 times as many parts as the Mustang does. And we're introducing glue into the equation as well. And in these situations, I sort of like to look over the parts, look over the instructions, and strategize a little bit. For instance, the very first step that tells you that I think I'm going to do, you know, right there in the order that they say, is to take the 2 engine halves and glue those together. There are certain things that I'm going to do pretty much as the instructions say, and then there are certain things that I'm going to kind of work just a subtle variation or two on, because I'm going to want to paint. I'm going to want to use some of these markers here to paint some of these pieces. When I was working on these things and I was your age, I would notice little details. Like, for instance, let's look over here at the back. What you see is that, and this is right across here. You see that we've got a red engine cover. We've got an engine cover that's in fact a brighter red than the rest of the body of the car. And yet, what do we have here? We have it just sort of molded, that piece that I just pointed out is just sitting here molded in charcoal gray on the trees here, on the sprue that I introduced you to with the Aventador kit. So if we want it to look like it is in the box, we're going to have to do a little something about that. And this is the thing to bear in mind, and this comes from a little bit of experience doing all this stuff. There are certain parts that are going to be better served painting them while they are still attached to the tree, and then there are going to be others that will serve their purposes better to break them, to clip them off the tree and glue them together first, so you can paint them as a unit. All right. The intake is nice there because it actually has a couple of little sprue pieces there to hold it in place while you paint it. The engine, though, is going to be aluminum silver all over. And in this case, it makes sense to take the bare plastic pieces off and glue them together first and paint them as a unit. And you'll see this in operation as we continue here. Okay, so I have the tweezers here for just in cases for small parts. I have the part snippers here. I have the same glue that I sent you. I sent you non-toxic cement sort of on accident. But and this is a lot like the stuff I remember from my youth, and that it has that sort of citrusy, orangey smell, a sweet smell, and it didn't seem to work very well as a kid. But I gave it a try last night, and I got to say, it takes a little extra time to dry, but it does hold together the plastic pretty nicely. So I'm going to work here using the same cement that I've given you. Okay, now, knowing that you're going to glue things together kind of gives you, and it's going to need some time to dry, kind of gives you an idea how to prioritize. Let's look at some of the stuff that's going to need gluing first, stuff that you're going to want together in one piece later on as you deal with them. And the primary thing that strikes me there is the engine. Okay, we'll set that off to the side for a second, and I'm going to get in there and remind you of the principles that we examined here with the wheels on the Airfix Aventador. Flats of the nippers against the piece that you want to cut, and that frees the piece. Now, something where Revell has been kind of clever here is that they've taken those little tree attachments and they've left marks where you're not going to see them, where you have done where you finally have the engine together. However, let's say that you want to clean those up to where there's no trace of them left. Well, that's going to go with this. That's going to go with this little packet of files that I gave you. That's what this is about. What we have in here are abrasive files. Okay. And you take them, and wherever you have something sticking up like that you want to smooth, you're just going to rub on them a little bit. And this is one of the fine files. I have the coarser file someplace else. I don't have it in the packet anymore. But even using that fine file, all of a sudden we're very smooth there. And where you have the little tree nub, you're going to want to maybe smooth them out. But it's also true of anything that has a line on the side that doesn't in real life, okay? This is the exhaust system, popped out of a two-piece mold. And because it's popped out of a two-piece mold, no matter how tight they get those molds to fold together, there's always going to be a little seam there. You can see it actually if you just look at the sprue, if you look at the tree, you can see the seam there where the two mold halves met. And no matter how hard they try, there's always going to be just a little bitty parting line there. And that's not there on the real parts. We're looking at the exhaust system right now, okay? And you can feel it with your finger. There's a little line there on the side. And this is another area where you might want a file. And you just get in there, And you don't have to spend hours at it, just a little bit of light work to get rid of that parting line. And then you're going to have, and you'll feel the difference. You'll feel the difference as you check it with your finger. And you're going to have a smoother and more realistic exhaust system as a result. So that's what these are all about. That's what they're there for. They're there to either smooth up the areas where you clip the parts from the tree, and where you see a mold parting line that you might like to smooth over, you can go ahead and use them for that purpose as well. Now I'm just going to move over to finishing up the engine parts here really quick, and getting a little disorganized here. I'm going to try to neaten up a little bit as we go. We'll have those instructions off to the side. And a little bit now about gluing these things together. Actually, since I've started with the whole filing work, I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm just going to clean up those areas a little bit. And maybe, as the surface is glue, I'm just going to run them across the sides real quick, like this. Making sure to mind where there are pins. You see that little pin there? And there's another pin there. Those two pins are supposed to go into the corresponding holes, there and there, on the other half of the engine block. Something else it'll behoove you to do is to take the pieces without any glue and just put them together. See how they're getting along. See how they fit first. All right, mine aren't doing too bad. Yeah, that's probably close enough for the proverbial government's work. I'm looking over here and I'm seeing a little bit of extra where the mold moves from a parting line to a lot of plastic getting squeezed between the two mold halves. You occasionally get a piece that's not supposed to be there, a projection that's not supposed to be there, like this one. Okay, that's called flash. That one we'll want to get rid of that flash there and just kind of clean it up so that it's nice and smooth on the top deck that's supposed to accept that piece that we're going to want to paint red. All right, yeah, and that's looking a little bit more like it should. Okay. All right, so we've got cement here that's going to want to set for about 4 hours for full strength. And we're going to give these two engine blocks a go that way now, okay? So you take your choice of the engine blocks. Now here's the glue. Now that was a bit of a big bubble there that came out, but I'm used to that stuff accidentally happening, and I was able to control it. If something like that happens with you, you might just want to pull back, wipe it off on a paper towel someplace. Always good to have paper towels with you. But you're going to look at all of the raised sections there. Everything that's on the same level is probably set to accept glue, and you're just going to run a very gentle bead of glue all around. And if you can see the shiny bit now, that shows you kind of where I have applied the glue. And we're going to take the other half of the engine and kind of pulling the fingers and thumb away from where the glue is going to be, we're going to look to line up the pins so that the pin and the receiving hole are lined up, and then we're just gently going to press them together. And hold them together like this. And sure enough, even the slow setting non-toxic glue is enough to grab them together and to grab the two pieces together and hold them like this. Okay? Now, here's a little trick in terms of deciding how you want to attack things. Now, as we look down the instructions, and we're hopscotching a little bit along the order here, we're going to see that there's a transmission pan and the oil pan that go on the bottom. The transmission pan, we're essentially going to be covering essentially on one area, okay? So I'm going to clip it and I'm going to glue it to the bottom of the transmission. I'm not going to do the same with this oil pan up front, however. Why? Because molded to the oil pan is the starter motor. And I know I'm going to want to paint that starter motor black. whereas everything else is silver. And I'm going to have a hard time reaching the top of the starter there if I get it glued to the engine. So that's actually going to stay on the tree for painting, and so is this front engine cover here. Right? That's actually the way it's supposed to orient on the front of the engine. We'll sneak the engine behind really quick so I can show you just how it's supposed to go. And you will see here when you line it up that there are. Oh, is that right? No, I was wrong. I have it upside down. Here you go. I was wondering because the accessories are getting in the way. All right, that's how it's supposed to go in there. All right, and that's what I get for not looking at the instructions real quick. When all else fails, follow the instructions, Murphy said. Okay, but that's also going to get painted on the other side here because we have this alternator. I think we may yet have a power steering pump on this car. I'm not sure, or it's probably an air compressor because cars have moved to electrically assisted steering these days, and I think that Camaro is one of them. All right, so we clip the oil pan. We set that aside. This frame, okay. We look at the oil pan really quick. And give that a little filing there on the side that we know is going to need the projection removed. Okay, that's feeling nice and smooth. And we'll file the other side where it's separated from the tree too. And I'm going to start by putting just a little bit of glue in the two holes here that are supposed to receive it. Let's shake it down. Let's get a bead of glue out there first. Okay, there it goes. And that's fine. We don't mind a little bit of excess, a little bit of slop there. And then we see here some pretty fat surfaces on the pan. And if you're really careful, kind of air on the inside of those surfaces so that you don't have too much squeezing to the outside. Okay? And then we'll take this, and there's an orientation for it, which I think I've got straight, and we'll go ahead and we'll put it on. All right. And that's how it's supposed to look once that transmission pan is in. Now I have this thing set up here in an assembly that I'm going to be able to go ahead and essentially hit it all with a marker. Now we'll set that aside for a minute. We're going to consider some other things that you might want to be up to full strength by the time you're working with them. And looking it over, I think I want the front suspension piece in there, all right? The front suspension piece into the chassis, because that's going to be a pretty critical area. It's going to be this part that that ensures that your entire front end, the front wheels, are held in place. And so we might as well go ahead and get that in now, and let it set up with some strength, okay? But before I do that, I think I'm going to get to a bit of paint detailing. All right, so paint detailing. Now that's actually going to use these markers here that have the paint in them, okay? And you're going to need to use something, maybe your tweezers or your little sprue nippers there, to kind of break the seal on these and get them loose. Or scissors. Or mom and dad's help, if they happen to be around, okay? All right, now, here's how these things work at the start, okay? You shake it. Actually, no. Let's look at this really quick, okay? Yeah, shaking it a little bit beforehand won't matter too much, all right? But actually, what they want you to do is, with the marker in the up position, go ahead and push down on the top there. It'll spring down and up, okay? Now that you've done that, without any paint in the tip so far, we'll go ahead and get the cap back on, and we're going to shake it. Going to shake it for a little while here, okay? All right, yeah, about like that. Now, we've shaken and we've given the paint a good mix. We're going to take a surface, a cardboard surface that we don't care about too much. So if you have something, piece of paper, or, I'd probably cardboard, something a little bit thicker that you don't care about too much. What we're going to have to do now is we're going to have to press the tip in and out with the paint, with the marker facing down, so that we get this thing saturated with paint. And in the ones I've worked with, you need to press down and up on it at least 20 times or so. Let's count. And if you watch the tip, you're going to see it start to saturate with the paint. Okay, so I'm actually going to move this in a little bit inboard, and we're going to count the number of times that we have to press it. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40. And it's only after 40 strokes that you start to see some paint infusing the tip. And so we keep at it. It's about 50 there. Okay, about 60 strokes. And now, after about 60 strokes, you start to see paint flowing to where it's coming in through the tip. All right? And now, at this stage, it's actually ready to start painting some parts. And I know from previous Camaro that I did that these control arms were black. And so I'm going to take this pen and do some black control arms a little bit. And I'm doing this now because it's going to be a little bit easier to do this now than it will be when it comes time to put these pieces in the front end. Okay, this particular piece in the front end, it's easier to get the suspension arms painted first. And so that's what I'm up to right now. And not being too super precise about it, I just want to get the general idea across. And there'll be a little bit of extra detail, a little bit of extra life and subtlety coming through it when these pieces are just a bit darker than the splash pan that's around them. And likewise, I'll do the same maybe with this side. Let's move really quick to the engine block. And here's how I would suggest that you start with that. And I think I'm going to use the actual ink pen here to start with. Okay, just going to go right in here on the outer surfaces. And then we will just grab it by the transmission later to finish the rest of the engine. You'll see how that works once this has had a chance and we revisit it after it's had a chance to just sit there and dry. Okay, but I'm sort of digging in here, and this is going to wear on the tip of the marker a little bit, but I'm digging in, I'm probing in, and I'm getting in some of the parts. And then, if we don't get into the deepest parts, that's not necessarily a terrible thing. It might lend a somewhat more realistic and somewhat dirtier appearance, because crevices tend to collect dark stuff. They tend to collect dirt. They tend to collect oil. They tend to have sort of a more shadowy and three-dimensional effect if there are some pieces in the side. Yeah, now that we've worked it a little bit, the ink is flowing really well. And this basic finish that we have here is going to be accurate for what you actually find under a ZL1 Camaro. It's actually going to be what we want to do for the rest of the engine. Now, one little subtlety here that I want to show you, we're going to jump ahead a little bit in the footage of painting the engine bits right now. Here it is with the block finished with the silver paint marker as opposed to the silver ink pen. You see here that I've left some areas bare. Okay, and that is because this is going to be the surface that needs to accept the glue in order to get that oil pan on the bottom and that engine cover on the front, and then the red air cleaner, the red engine cover there, on the top. Now we leave these parts bare because glue and paint do not mix. What you're generally going to get there is kind of a blotchy mess, and the adhesion of the glue is going to be compromised, so the pieces won't stick together. And any point where you get paint on the gluing surface, you're going to want to clean it up, and this is where the file might come in handy. I have a little bit more than is strictly ideal for where the exhaust manifolds are going to go, so I'm just gently going to reach in there really quick, kind of get in there with a file some. Yeah, and open up just a bit more of the paint from the gluing surface so that it has a place for those exhaust manifolds to catch on, okay? So just remember, try to keep the painted surfaces away from where you know you're going to need to glue. All right, so having done some of the paint detailing, let's review everything that we have done here in order to get this thing ready for assembly, all right? The rotors here, these are the brake rotors and the calipers here, and you're going to actually see that the instructions kind of highlight these pieces because they're going to be visible behind those 5-spoke wheels. The 5-spoke wheels are open, so you'll be able to see these through them. And since you'll be able to see these through them, it'll be a nice little touch if you can give them a little paint detailing. Now, these rotors are generally cast iron, but once they've been squeezed by brake calipers, they tend to get worn smooth to an almost mirror finish. So that bright silver marker will be fine, actually, for detailing these. And you should start with the silver marker, and then you can follow up with the red marker to get these brake calipers, if you want to go that far. The chassis, you'll see here that I have glued in and let set. I put a little weight on it actually there to let it set overnight. This front chassis pan here, which has the front axle elements. But you'll see also that just a little bit of marker detailing. Nothing too extravagant here, but we have some heat shielding. I reached in there with both the silver paint and the silver ink markers. We see sort of. I'm actually not sure what that is. I guess that's a fuel tank, possibly. That's up there, and it conforms over the drive shaft. And we've given that a combination of both the black marker, the black ink marker for the general tank, and then a little bit of the black paint marker to make the straps, the retaining straps, a little bit shinier. We used the black paint marker on the suspension elements for a shiny black. And then you see what we call the differential here right at my fingertip. That is generally an aluminum housing. And I used the silver marker to kind of capture that particular detail. Once again, using a really light touch with the silver ink marker, brought out a little bit of the instrument panel bezel details. And the steering wheel is supposed to have sort of silver spokes. Did that with the silver ink pen in a very light touch, and then just a little bit of the black detail pen to kind of touch up after it. And it's the same thing with the little door pulls on the door panels. Okay, and then what we have here, this white thing here, that is the master cylinder for the brakes. It is going to be visible just ahead of the firewall. You glue that to the front of the interior piece, and it is generally a white plastic reservoir with a shiny black metal vacuum booster right behind it. That was detailed, both those, the white and the black paint markers were used to pull those out. And then I used the little ink marker, which is a little bit easier to control, to get that little cap detail there on the top. And that cap you remove when you need to inspect and replace your brake fluid. You see the rest of the brake rotors here, and you also see that I've taken advantage of a little bit of a difference between the silver ink marker and the silver paint marker. The silver paint marker is a little bit brighter than the silver ink marker, such that by happy accident here, the silver ink marker looks more like steel, and the silver paint marker looks more like aluminum. And so I was able to use that to create the subtle differences here. The catalytic converter is a little bit shinier, and this aluminum cross member here, and the mufflers in the back, all of them a little bit shinier and brighter than the more steely main exhaust pipes that go underneath. Okay. Here you see a similar effect sort of in reverse for the front exhaust manifolds. The manifolds got the brighter finish, and then the darker finish from the ink pen, bright finish here from the paint marker, and then the duller finish from the ink pen went on these elements over here at the back of the exhaust manifolds. I think these are also catalytic converters. I think there are a number of them. And then we have the engine accessory drive and the front engine cover, mainly aluminum, but paint detailed to bring out the belts and the pulleys. And here you see the oil pan with the integrated mounts, and you see that I've picked out the oil filter in black, and the starter in black there too, just to bring out a little bit more highlight and life. And I also made sure to get the engine mounts on the top surfaces as well as the bottom ones. You're going to actually see these from the top when you look in the finished engine compartment. And let's see, we got the engine housing here. This was done purely with a red marking pen. And then I used the black ink marker to cover the supercharger. That's right there in the middle. That's not covered. And if you look here at the body shell, we have the window seals highlighted in black, just exactly the way we did with the Mustang, except more carefully this time, because I can't use the alcohol cleanup on this body. I think the alcohol will damage the paint. Haven't gone so far as to actually try it, but I've heard enough experience from people here that I'm real cagey, and I'm not willing to risk swabbing it up with alcohol. So again, just really careful with the detail pen around the border, and then very gently filling it in with the black marker underneath. And then, last but not least, using both the silver and the gold paint markers, we pulled out this bow tie Chevy emblem right here from the front. You'll notice that the body already has it pre-painted on the back, but you have to do something about it in order to make it visible from the front. Okay, paint detailing is largely done. Okay, so that'll do it for this video. Now in the next one, we're going to look at putting everything together.